Hello and welcome back to our channel. Today we're going to be looking at another type of loop, which is a for loop. A for loop and a while loop have the same purposes. Their purpose is to repeat a piece of code a number of times. The difference is we use a for loop when we know how many times our code is going to run, and we use a while loop when we don't know how many times our code is going to run. You can see for loops and a file. We're going to create a file called forloop.c. We're going to put in our template, which is #include standard io.h. We're going to have a comment that's going to tell what our main function is going to do. It's going to print numbers 1 till 5, and it's going to return 0 as usual. Now we can write our main function, which is int main void. Now the syntax for a for loop is quite different for the syntax of a while loop. For a for loop, we're going to have for and in parentheses. The first thing we're going to put is our initializing statement, which is going to be something like I equals 0. It's going to initialize our variable I, or our counter variable, to 0. Then we're going to put a semicolon, and we're going to have a certain condition. When this condition goes to false, our for loop is going to break. So we're going to have a condition like I is less than num. Then finally, we're going to increment our counter variable. In this case, it's I, so we're going to have I plus plus. In a while loop, we had these in multiple lines, but in a for loop, it's all going to be inside the parentheses. Now we can write our for loop. So before we write our for loop, we need to initialize our counter variable. So we're going to have int I. We don't have to initialize the value. We're going to do that inside the for statement. So inside the for statement, we're going to initialize I to 0, and our condition is going to be I is less than or equals to 5, because we want to print the numbers. Actually, I is going to be 1, because we want to print the numbers 1 till 5. Then we're going to increment I by 1. Then inside our for loop, we're going to printf. We're going to put in the identifier for an integer, which is %d. We want each number to be on its own line, so we're going to add the new line character. And in %d, we want to substitute I. And that's it for our for loop. We're going to return 0. And now we can save our program and see if it runs correctly. To run our program, we're going to use the GCC compiler for_loop.c, and we're going to name our output file for_loop. As you can see, compiled with no errors. Now we can run it with ./for_loop. As you can see, it printed the numbers 1 till 5. We did the same thing with a while loop, so that's why their purposes are the same. Now we're going to do a small project using for loops. So we're going to go back to the for loop file, which is for loop.c. Now we want to make a function that's going to give us the sum of the first n natural numbers. That means if n is equals to, let's say, 5, it's going to give us the sum 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5. So we can update our comment to say it prints the sum of the first n natural numbers. So we're going to initialize n, which is going to represent the limit of our function, which is we're going to call it num. We're going to set it to 5, because we want the first 5 natural numbers, the sum of the first 5 natural numbers. So we need a variable called sum, which is going to store our sum, and we're going to initialize it to 0. Then inside our for loop, we need to change some stuff. For example, we do not need to print I. What we need to do is first we're going to update the condition. We need I to start from 0, or I can start from 1. I can start from 1. And we're going to have our condition I is less than or equals to not 5, but equal and less than or equals to none. So our program could be more flexible, so we can change now and it's still going to work. And inside the for loop, we're going to have our sum variable, and this is a different syntax, which is plus equals I, which is going to be the same as, this is the same as saying take sum and put it equal to sum plus I. This is just a shorthand representation, so it does the same thing. Then after that, we do not need to change anything else. We can save our program. So to look at what's going to happen, first I is going to be equal to 1, and so it's going to be sum plus equals 1, so our sum is going to be 1. Then in the next iteration, I is going to be 2, so sum is already 1, so it's going to be 1 plus 2, it's going to be 3. It's going to go until I is 5, so then we're going to have sum plus equals 5, and we'll get our sum. And after the for loop, we want to print our sum, so we're going to use the %d identifier. We want it to have a new line next to it, and we want sum to be replaced by %d. So now we can save our file and see if it works. We need to compile it first, so we're going to do gcc for loop.c, and our output file is going to be called for_loop. As you can see, compiled with no errors. We can run it with /for_loop. As you can see, it printed 15, which is 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5. Just for the sake of practice, we can change 5 and see if it still works. So we're going to go back to our for loop. Then we're going to change num to, let's say, 3. So this should return 1 plus 2 plus 3, which is 6. So we're going to compile our file again, which is gcc for_loop.c, and we're going to name the output file for_loop. Compiled with no errors. Now we're going to run it, and as you can see, we got 6. So this is all about for loops. As always, you can find the video code in the description, and you'll also find exercises with their solutions. And thank you for watching this video, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more programming videos.